friends, welcome back to another video with me. Today we are talking about contextual tarot. So if you're unsure what that means, well, you're here to learn. Contextual tarot is using the hints and clues which a tarot card may give you, whether literally on the card or through where they sit in the suits, to understand more about the actual goings on, foundations of the particular reading or information or situation which you are dealing with. Of course, most of the time we do tend to pull more than one card, so maybe you'll pull 3, 4, 5 or more, and those specific cards are working to build the whole picture. But that picture has a frame, it has paints which have made it up, it has situations which have come before or will come from it, which are continuing to give us context. Now there are two main ways that you can look for context in tarot cards, and we're going to be talking about them today. So the very first one would be the specific image which you have, so the image on the card, and the second one is the traditional natural kind of goings on around the card. So let's start with our images on the card. So I've picked two examples today. They're from the Orion's Tarot deck or Orion's Tarot deck, which you can find online if you would like to. I did get it in a Kickstarter, so I don't know if you can still buy it. I've picked two cards with kind of pictures which I have used before myself, so I've actually used these in readings before, which came in really handy and did end up being either true or helpful for the person. So I've used them multiple times. This isn't like private information or anything, but these are just two really great examples that I know of myself. So let's start with this one. It's probably the most obvious one, and this is Temperance. So as you can see, there's a crab on the front and we have some nice water imagery and things like that. So the crab's been chosen because Temperance is all about balance and kind of adaptation, having your best side, your worst side, and trying your best to be the most effective version of you or version of the events. This is represented in the crab because the crab is obviously able to kind of sprint across land, also breathe in water, they're hardy, they're adapted, they have their own weapons on their body. But something else really interesting is going on with this card. So generally speaking, when we're using signs and astrology in tarot, there are certain signs or planets which are assigned to every single card. For Temperance, it's actually Sagittarius. However, we can't ignore the fact that the crab is literally the sign for Cancer, the sign Cancer. When I read with this card, I tend to take both of these things into consideration, and this is where the imagery will come in handy. There may be times when you have a tarot card and it is showing maybe a ram or a lion or a beautiful lady adorned in flowers, and you may begin thinking about a certain star sign, zodiac sign, or even a certain event or symbol. You can use that in the reading if it feels applicable. So I've said before, when these cards come up, that maybe the person is a Cancer or a Sagittarius or has both within their chart, and that has been correct. Or I've said before, kind of maybe this is about finding a way to balance your defensive side with being a little bit softer. So like Cancer is a water sign, it is a sign which likes to be empathetic and nurturing, and again that was really helpful. So how would you interpret this card yourself? Is there something that you would say about having the Sagittarius card mixed in with the obviously side of Cancer? Something else that I would personally say about this specific example is that both signs have links to Jupiter. Jupiter is ruled by Sagittarius, or rather Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So again, that Jupiter planet is perhaps seen in this specific card. The second example I have is less so about astrology and more so about really utilizing the specific card in hand. So this is a really, really interesting one. If I try to show it to you as closely as I can, you'll see that it's the Nine of Swords, and there is a millipede weaving their way through these 9 swords. In theory, that is the danger, isn't it? Weaving yourself through all these swords, trying not to get hurt. But actually, there's something a lot more dangerous going on here, because obviously the millipede has lots of legs. They are perfectly capable of getting through these tiny gaps. But what they're not seeing, if I try to bring it closer, is that some of these cards, swords right here, are actually laced with poison. If you look very, very closely, it never seems to come up on camera, that is how detailed this card is. Some of them, about 3 of the swords, have tiny green splashes on them, and that is poison. And if you read the deck's booklet, the artist actually picks up on this and talks about this. This is a very, very important detail for the Nine of Swords in this specific deck. And you may be missing those details in your own deck. It happens all the time. There's been decks I've had for years, months, etc. and only then just noticed something about them. So another example would be I have a deck with the Six of Pentacles where a crocodile seems to be playing with some birds. But if you look to one side of the image, they have their hand in the bird's nest where the eggs are. So whilst the Six of Pentacles is charitable, could it be showing that the charity is for some sort of gain? With the Nine of Swords, whilst you're avoiding the obvious dangers, in what way may you be kind of tripping yourself up before you've even finished, so poisoning yourself before you've got to the end? Are you ignoring dangers that aren't so obvious to see because you're so busy running away from the ones which are? It's these tiny pieces of imagery which are in our specific decks that are going to give us amazing interpretations of the cards themselves. And I always like to say that you pick a certain deck for a certain reason, and it might be for those reasons. Especially if you're looking to identify something with tarot, so maybe you're identifying an ancestor, a spirit guide, a deity, using a specific deck and then trying to see how those images maybe mean something is going to help you with doing that, because you don't just pick up the deck for no reason. So a really good example, again, is that if I was to get this card in, say, a deity reading, I would most likely start thinking about ocean deities, or deities who are both oceanic in some way or water related, and also related to the planet Jupiter in some way. So luck, expanse, maybe even commerce. So that's how you can use specific images when it comes to tarot. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is actually using the context of where they sit in their suits or in their major arcana lineup. So the most obvious way that you can do this is with the minor arcana. Where the minor arcana sits, you know, ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, has a beginning or an end, and things either side of them, apart from obviously with ace and king, they don't really go anywhere or come from anywhere anyways. If you have something like the Four of Wands, don't just take into account what the Four of Wands literally tells you. Don't just regurgitate the key words. You know, it's not just homecoming. It's not just you will find love, although those things are probably going to be really literal. Think about where that's coming from. The Four of Wands, before it becomes the Four, is the Three of Wands. It's expansion. It's seeing opportunities, perhaps overseas, of course, with that specific card. And then where does it go from the Four of Wands to the Five of Wands? That can be uncomfortable transitions, feeling like you need to defend yourself or maybe someone you love, even in the reference of Four of Wands. And we can take all of these things together when we're thinking about that Four of Wands. We can see it as that harmony without forgetting that there's been growth beforehand, Three of Wands, and that it might not go exactly where we want it to, Five of Wands, without fully realizing the card we're currently on. And you can do the same with Major Arcana. So to take an example from the Major Arcana, I always love to consider the Magician for what is either side of it. I think it's really easy to talk about the Magician in terms of a little bit better than the Fool, but not quite as good as the High Priestess. And let me tell you why. So the Magician card is someone with foresight, but they don't quite see long term, and they have internal magic, but the world is not yet fully in their control magically. This is very much a sandwiched card between these two ideas. The Fool is just happy-go-lucky, running with whatever they want to see, never looking too far in the future, and that's why they fall off the cliff. The Magician has slightly more foresight, but not as much as the High Priestess, who is a very intuitive being. Equally, if we work backwards, the High Priestess is a mage. You know, they are an amazing magical person who is in control of their magic and sees magic in the whole big world. But the Magician is more of a personal magician. They personally see these things, and they are able to use their own ideas, but maybe not so much with the world around them. How could you continue to use those with other ideas of the Major Arcana? Are there certain cards which you've maybe considered in that way before? The Emperor and the Empress are really good at pairing in that way. Maybe you see some difference between them from how they ascend into the Major Arcana, or maybe you've never considered that before. If you have, if you haven't, drop your ideas below and let me know how this might help you when you read in the future. But for now, I will be going, so I will see you another time in the future. Hopefully, if you subscribe, and if you haven't yet subscribed, well, please do. So see you for now, YouTube. Bye.